Back to Georgia now, where Democrats are now projected to win at least one seat in the two runoff elections that will determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. CBS News projects that Democrat Reverend Raphael Warnock has defeated Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler, making him the state's first black U.S. senator. The other race is still too close to call, with Democrat Jon Ossoff showing a slight edge over Republican David Perdue. Democrats will need to win both races, however, to gain control of the Senate. CBS News national correspondent Mark Strassmann has the latest.
We prove that with hope, hard work, and the people by our side, anything is possible.
Democratic candidate Reverend Raphael Warnock said he's headed to the Senate to work for all Georgians. But incumbent Kelly Loeffler still sees a path to victory and promised to keep fighting.
We got some work to do here. This is a game of inches. We're going to win this election. We're going to save this country. That's right. That's right.
The race between incumbent Republican David Perdue and Democrat Jon Ossoff is even tighter. 4.6 million Georgians cast ballots in these critical races that will determine control of the Senate. The coronavirus pandemic and its economic impact mattered most to voters. A CBS News exit poll found more than half of voters said they experienced financial hardship due to the pandemic. More than $340 million were poured into the races over 2 months, despite President Trump's baseless claims of election fraud in Georgia in the presidential election.
There's no way we lost Georgia. There's no way. That was a rigged election.
CBS News found 7 in 10 Georgia voters felt confident the votes cast in this election will be counted fairly. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
We're a very competitive state, and we obviously have big turnout, and both parties have fought hard, to get their vote out. And so we're just going to have to wait and see how this all shakes out.
CBS News political contributor Molly Hoover is joining us now with more on this. So, Molly, give us a sense, where do we currently stand this morning when it comes to these two races? Well, we know where we stand with at least one of them, but give us the details. And, when do we hope that we may see the final results with the other race?
Well, that's a good question. Let's go to the Ossoff versus Perdue race first, since that has not been declared. Right now, it looks as if Ossoff has about a 0.4% lead on David Perdue, and under Georgia rules and laws, if the trailing contender has a 0.5% difference in vote tallies, then they can request a recount. So, if at the end of this process later today, noon, later in the afternoon, Senator Perdue is behind by less than 0.5% of the votes, he can request a recount, which will mean it will take a little bit longer, I'd say a few weeks longer, for that race to be decided. But in Kelly Loeffler's case, she was saying that this is a game of inches as opposed to, a sprint to the finish. The reason she says that is because she thinks that, these mail-in ballots and absentee ballots that are still coming in will help her in some way. But the problem is as of about 2 this morning, she was down 46,000 votes. And that's a steep hill to climb in terms of inches, especially because a lot of those mail-in ballots and absentee ballots are coming in from places that are traditionally Democratic strongholds. So that's why it looks like the Democrats may take these seats. But again, in terms of David Perdue's race, there may be a little uncertainty there. But in terms of Loeffler's, it looks like she lost.
It's a done deal there. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says that he thinks as many as 4.6 million people voted in the runoff election. So give us a sense of who voted. Who made up the significant blocks that may have made all the difference here?
Well, consider this. So if 4.6 million people voted, that includes the 3 million people who voted early or absentee. And that's a huge chunk of voters. And a lot of those came from more Democratic counties and communities of color, really getting out the vote and revving up their base to ultimately hand the Senate to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that's huge. I mean, if you compare this to the last time there was a Senate runoff like this in Georgia, only something like 2.5 million people came out, and that's when Saxby Chambliss was elected to the Senate back in the early 2000s. So this is a major, major deal, and it just shows that, several things. One, Trump was not on the ballot this time, and that probably impacted Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue's, ability to get voters to the polls. The other thing is how activated and energized the Democrats were to get to the polls and vote for their candidates. And again, give Joe Biden those 2 votes he needs in the Senate to essentially create an evenly split Senate, which, when the Democratic Party holds the presidency and the vice presidency, means the president of the Senate, Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, is a Democrat. So she can break all these ties. And what this really means is that, it'll make it that much easier for Joe Biden to get his cabinet appointees approved, to get them confirmed to the office. And I think that, we will see over the next few days the vice president coming out with his picks for attorney general, and the more lightning rod, cabinet positions, if you will, because he will have a little bit more leeway to pick somebody. Perhaps I've heard Sally Yates' name mentioned as a possibility, who is from the state of Georgia.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, just because, and it is a 50-50 split in the Senate if the Democrats take this other race as well. But that doesn't mean sort of, then everything that President-elect Biden wants to occur happens, that he gets to sort of run the tables. It's not that easy, but there are some things that it will be much easier to do, including some of the individuals that he wants appointed to different key positions. Keeping that in mind, once we get the outcome of this other race, how quickly will we see these senators sworn in and, sort of getting down to business?
Well, pretty much as soon as they're certified, and if there is not a recount, given Kelly Loeffler's, the vote difference between Loeffler and Warnock, they can be sworn in relatively soon after they've been certified. But I think, again, in Jon Ossoff's case, if there is a recount, that process will take a little bit longer. But still, we could see them sworn in before the former Vice President, President-elect Biden would take office on January 20th.
Okay, there you go. Molly, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, so a reminder that we will have full coverage of Georgia's runoff elections throughout the day, so you don't want to miss one thing, not one single thing. Head over to cbsnews.com/Georgia to keep track of everything you need to know.